Okay, Miss Rebecca. So I'm going to get you to go all the way down to the end and then come back. So Becky's wearing a black silk chiffon evening dress from about 1932 or 1933. This is out of Claus's collection. You found this at the Beaty Village on Victoria Drive last October or thereabouts. Just to let you know, if you are at Beaty Village and you see me or Claus, you are encouraged to come and say hello. I know that we have made the big time when we are recognized in Vancouver's most important thrift store. And we are there at least 3 times a week. Remember, it's not how much you pay for something, it's how little you pay. And we know how smart you are, not how big your bank balance is. Big balances are lovely, but brains are good too. So, anyway, as I was saying, in the 1920s, understatement was the issue. In the 30s, that reverses once again. Fashion's always about one action followed by a reaction. In the 30s, once the Depression begins, you lose everything. You lose your job, you lose your business, you lose the house, the farm, whatever it is that was a major financial asset to you before. The only thing which is really left is you, and becomes really, really important to display yourself well. I'm going to get you to go stand. Here's the way down again, please. What happens is the body reappears. In the 20s it was invisible, now it becomes conspicuous. And this isn't about political voice anymore. They've made the statement. Women could vote. A little bit further, if you would, please, Becky. Yeah, to the second seat in the carpet, if you would. Thank you. Now these people can't see. Nobody's happy. I learned from my parents. I was the bone and they were the 2 dogs. When 2 dogs fight over a bone, it's the bone that gets bit. So if you try to keep everybody happy, it doesn't really work. Okay, now you can come back. So, what's happening here? In the 1920s, the dresses were cut on the weave of the fabric. Now they're cut on the diagonal or the bias, so that the fabrics will cling to the body, particularly when the fabric has beadwork on it. In this instance, it has jewelry. It has rhinestones, so right into the texture of the fabric itself. The dress is decorated with ostrich feathers. And it is, in fact, most likely a dress from the 1920s that's been remade in the 30s, which is in keeping with the elements of depression. Let me give you that back. So, we'll get you down there again, please. So, the feathers have been applied to the shoulders to give width, making the waistline smaller. And on the skirt, the feathers are attached at the hips, so that the hips appear rounder and fuller, and therefore more feminine, more glamorous, and again the result is that the waistline is smaller. The lower part of the skirt, the bottom flounce, has been added on as well, and it's cut on the bias in gauge panels. A gauge panel is one which is wider at the bottom than it is at the top. This means it gives you volume, but without bulk. So the whole thing becomes sort of mermaid or fishtail, and that's exactly what you want to emphasize this kind of line. Thank you very much, Becky. We have the next one, please. Now I'm going to get you all the way down there back to me, please. There you go. Now, Cindy is dressed here as she would be for an evening out, a formal evening out, during the wartime 40s or just after the war. This aesthetic really stays popular and certainly socially acceptable until about 1947 and 48. By then there is a more conspicuous cutting edge change. But this aesthetic will be in popular use from about 1942, 1941. The war starts in 39. But this is about efficiency and strength. During the war, women started to adopt shoulder pads into their clothing. Shoulder pads give you an appearance of being physically strong. This is important because there's a war on. It makes you feel capable. If necessary, you could win the war all by yourself. Also, of course, it makes the waistline look smaller. The aesthetic is essentially, the formula is based on the silhouette of the letter T. top heavy, broad through the shoulders, narrow in the body. You couldn't depend on corsetry anymore. Corsets had sort of gone out of popular use in the 1920s, but they were always reappearing in some form or other. Girdles tended to be more important than corsets, but even girdles were difficult to work in, especially if you were looking after the house on your own, looking after your children, that sort of a lifestyle. My parents were both in the Canadian Army during the Second World War. My mother was stationed just down the hill at Jericho here. And she was telling me that a popular poem amongst the women on the base this was about getting elastic and things made out of rubber. And you couldn't even get elastic necessary for your underwear. There were always problems with the button coming off your underwear and you lose your panties on the parade ground and so on. Many women told me this and always happened to somebody else, never to them, which I always thought was interesting. But in terms of girdles are made out of elastic and they're there primarily to keep the stomach flat and to keep the flesh of the body firm so that you don't jiggle in the dress. That's too vulgar, supposedly. Now the poem goes, ships of steel for even keel need tons and tons of corset steel. Army trucks, if they're to hurdle, need the rubber of the girdle. The time has come, the gods have written, women now must bulge for Britain. Now, the dress is a rayon crepe. It's from the Salmon company, which I think is Toronto. It might be Montreal. I'm not specifically sure. It's meant, I'll get you right down to the end if you could, please. It's meant to look like separates. It's actually in one piece, but it's supposed to look like a separate top and skirt. And this is typical wartime. This is about efficiency, so that one top could be worn with a variety of different skirts, or even with trousers, perhaps. During the war, evening dress that covered the shoulders did accommodate shoulder pads, but it was there actually for a more practical reason, especially in European cities, where if you went out for the evening, you might not be able to find a theater that was heated. It's cool in here, as you know, but in many European cities, as the war got worse, a lot of theaters couldn't be heated, so it was more important to be comfortable. Also, if you were in a city that was being bombed, you might have to spend the night or longer in an air raid shelter. So economy and efficiency were more important than provocative power. The beading on the bodice is of butterflies. So there's one of our natural history references here. Her little pom-pom hat is by Utley Armstrong, who was a Vancouver milliner. I always thought it was a man, but apparently Utley is a woman's name. She was on Granville Street, I think, and I bought that at the Salian on 12th Avenue at least 40 years ago. Now, just as another little element of natural history, the coat and the muff are colobus monkey fur. It is particularly gruesome, of course, because it looks just a tiny bit too much like human hair. So it has a sort of a macabre overtone to it. But during the 40s, because of the fascination with this big chunky shoulder line, they loved bulky, stiff furs. The colobus monkey was so popular, it starts to appear in fashion really in about 1913 or thereabouts. But by this time, during the wartime 40s, it was so popular, they really did hunt the monkeys to the point of near extinction. So they were for many, many years on the endangered species list, but they have been removed and you can buy it again. I would not recommend it. Fur looks best on the animal that grew it. Leave it there. If you wish to wear a fur coat, buy a recycled one. There is no point in throwing them away. We knew a dealer who had one in her store, would not sell them. She buried it. What is the point in that? That means that the animal is sacrificed twice. That's even worse. Thank you very much, Cindy. We have the next one. Now, I'm going to get you to follow Cindy right down to the far end, if you will, please. Now, this is an outfit out of Claus's collection. The dress is from Vienna. The hat is from Munich. So we have an Austrian garment combined with a German accessory here. The dress is silk, absolutely spectacular fabric, fairly substantial, crinoline inside the skirt to give it the right volume. The style is what comes out of New Look, which was initiated really by Christian Dior in 1947. But that look, once it's established, becomes the formula until about 1955 or 56. And then it shades off into a different kind of silhouette. But this is about establishing traditions, re-establishing traditions of femininity. The shoulders are broad but sloping. The skirt is full rather than slim. And it is a little bit longer now than it would have been for a daytime skirt in the wartime years. This is about indulgence, helping the economy improve, creating a garment that can't be made out of an old one, because you need different amounts of fabric and different volume, different surface area in the patterned pieces. The print on the dress is pheasant feathers, all overlapping again as they would appear on the bird. And the hat, this wonderful little cocktail hat, is silk velvet, ornamented with jet glass, French jet it's called, glass beads to catch the light. And then the ornament is the head and feathers of yet another poor dead bird of paradise. In this instance, they have been dyed to complement the black hat. Thank you very much. I'm going to get you to go right down behind Santa Susan there. Now, you wanted birds. I said we were going to do birds. Now, we were doing a fashion show in Houston or Dallas years ago. I can't remember which city it was, to tell you the truth. And after the show, of course, one of the reasons I did shows in the States is that every time we wrote it into our contract and we'd always have an extra day in that city so we could hit the thrift stores and the antique shops and the vintage clothing stores. There was a shop in, I think this was in Dallas, going out of business. The owner of the shop had died, unfortunately, and his business partner was selling everything off at half price. I have never seen more glamorous theatrical clothing from the 1950s, early 60s, as is this dress, anywhere in Texas, the land of superlatives. The dress doesn't have a designer name in it, but it was sold through Neiman Marcus in Dallas. It is probably about 1962, but it could be as early as I suggest, about 1957. This is a Barbie doll school of design. This is over the top. Everything is supposed to be exaggerated. I'm going to take the stole away from you, if I may. Thank you. Now, little time to get you down there again. The dress is all self-contained, and by that I mean it has all the superstructure built into it in terms of foundation garments, the crinolines and everything. It's all in one piece. And in fact, the dress will stand up by itself on the floor. Now, when I got the dress, and this was going to be in about 1996 or thereabouts, I was concerned about bringing it through the border because it is machine-made lace, all they call it re-embroidered lace, meaning that once the lace has been woven, then with a machine they take ribbon and they sew the ribbon down to create a texture, and then over that they've applied all these feathers. And you never know if customs people are going to accept the fact that it's ostrich feathers. And ostrich is farmed commercially for the feathers and now for the leather and the meat as well. Anyway, I thought I would actually buy a dog's leash and put it around the waistline and tell them it was my poodle. But I was looking rather rough, and I thought, no, this isn't going to work. So I had decided to drink excessively the night before, so I was looking extremely hungover. I packed it in an army duffel bag. I didn't shave. I looked like nothing on earth. When I got to the customs guy, he looked at me and he said, "What's in the bag?" And I said, "A dress." He did not believe me. He opened the bag, then he believed me, and he looked at me and he said, "Okay." No problem at all. So, now, the stole is also ostrich feather. The hat, we'll get you down. The hat is rooster feathers that have been altered. They've been clipped and curled and dyed conceivably. They might be the natural color, but I think they're dyed. So that the quill is actually like a spine supporting the tip, and then the whole thing is actually inserted. The tip of the quill is inserted into a small styrofoam ball. I don't mean to just demystify this thing because it looks so fantastic, but it's actually a very, very simple, very practical way of making this fabulous explosion of a hat. Her earrings are also feathers, by the way. Everything there is a feather. Okay, thank you very much. We have the next one. I'm going to get you to go all the way down and then come back to the middle first. Now, Sophie's wearing a sort of a Barbie doll, baby doll kind of cocktail dress here. This is by the German designer Heinz Estergaard. Heinz Estergaard was considered to be the Christian Dior of Germany. He was a very young man at the end of the Second World War, and he managed to get himself a stash of pre-war fabric, which he was able to create garments for the wives of American servicemen, as well as for some of the aspiring young actresses in Germany just after the war. So that established his fame, and he went on to have a very, very long, very successful career. The dress is of foulard silk with chiffon over top, and the print is the same on both different fabrics. This is 60s. This is about Twiggy. This is about getting away from the 50s and early 60s exaggeration of the figure. So again, it's action and reaction. When Sophie tried the dress on first, she said it looked like one of her grandmother's nightgowns. And I can understand that. I was old enough to, or I am old enough, more than old enough, to remember when this was first happening. I first came to UBC in 1965, and that was just when really short mini skirts were starting to be big, big news. Some of the girls I was going to school with, I came down from the Okanagan, and some of the girls were trying to take their old skirts and making them into mini skirts. So they were making their old full skirts that had worn with crinolines into mini skirts. It did not work, especially when they were doing it with kilts. It was pretty wild then. Of course, now anything goes. But anyway, we get to this here. Now, as the skirts got shorter and shorter, and the figure became less conspicuous, the legs were the focus. The legs were the design feature. And it became important to draw attention to that part of the figure. So pantyhose in bright, bright colors or in exotic textures, fishnets and the like, became the popular norm. And especially as the skirts got really short, you didn't want to wear stockies because the garters would show. And that was inappropriate. So here you get that sense of modernity and freedom, but it's truly highly respectable at the same time. The shoes, instead of high-heeled and stiletto heels, now it's a low little slipper in a baby doll style, it's called really, and this is again about youthfulness. When sorry, I'm going to get you down there again, you can't see. When Twiggy became the most important model in the fashionable world, she was 16 years old. She was 16, 5'6", and she weighed 106 pounds. Now that was unrealistic, of course, it was non-appropriate, but she was really meant to be just an armature holding the sculpture of the garment. So you can understand why that was so successful. So big hair, little bows and things like this, and lots of glitter to add to this party element. And in this instance, our feathers are once again ostrich feathers. This, in its day, would have been referred to perhaps as a cage dress, meaning that the outer dress is in the form of a cage, and inside that, seeing through the transparency of the fabric, you'd see the actual figure inside. Thanks very much, Sophie. And we have an expert. I'm going to get you all the way down there. Mackenzie is wearing a raw linen, so natural fiber, evening dress that was bought in San Francisco in 1970. And this is all about getting away from being a plastic person. Some of you are as old as I am. That's good. Now, in the 70s, angles come back into fashion. So if you look at the dress, it's actually a long, slender angle. What you'd also see would be things like flared pants. Not stovepipes, but flares, bell bottoms, all of that kind of stuff. Right back where we were in the 1890s, giving volume at the bottom, tapering upward towards the waist, more or less. Here the waistline is high. The bodice is buckskin. It actually laces at the back. You can't see that because of Mackenzie's hair, but it laces up the back with a thong, a leather strip of the same suede. On the bodice, there are appliques of leaves cut out to match the leaves of the print. So this is all about natural form, natural aesthetic, natural colors. Even if there are chemical dyes, they're meant to look like they're natural organic dyes. No more hats, because the crowning glory was your hair. And your hair, if it was kinky, was supposed to be left kinky. In the 60s, you'd set it on soup cans to make it go straight. You wanted volume, but it had to be contrived. Now it's all about it being natural. I had hair in those days. And my hair was to my waist. I still have it. It is now in a brown paper bag. I thought when I got old I'd have it made into a hairpiece and no one would know the difference. Well, it wasn't going to happen. Anyway, now, we don't see any feathers here, but we have foot feathers in her hair right here. These are pheasant feathers right here. It's held in place with a headband, which is handed out macrame, done in linen, with beads in it through here. And her principal piece of jewelry is a leather band here. This is the original piece of jewelry made by the designer of the dress, to be worn with it. Worn up here on the upper part of the arm, and hanging from it is a tassel of domestic fowl, probably chicken feathers, hanging here. So there's our feather touch. And in other words, this is about respecting nature in perhaps a little bit more healthy way. Can we get you down there? Now, also, Mackenzie is very proud of her ability to wear shoes that have 5-inch platforms to them. She is now a towering inferno. And those are classic. In the 70s, 60s, 70s, a lot of people were actually adopting things out of the 1940s. If any of you shopped at Jahnke in Gastown, right next door to Fox and Plumage, that's where you could buy that kind of a look. And that A-line skirt is actually meant to be reminiscent of dresses of the late 1930s. And if we get our last outfit, please. Okay, thank you. We'll get you right down there, please. Now, last week we were out shopping, Huss and I were out shopping, and not looking for anything specific to use in this show today, but I was wondering how to finish the program off. And this dress was in one of the shops on Main Street, a shop called Bohemia. And she's having a sale. Excuse me. So I said, how much is this dress? And it was marked $20. I said, well, how much do you want for it? And she said, it's $5. So I thought, well, this is contemporary, this is a modern dress. It has feathers as a print. And I think that is much more to the point. So I said, oh, well, for $5, I'll buy it. And she said, take it. So I said, okay, I'll tell you what, we'll use it in the show, and I'll mention the shop. So her name is Jan Purcell. The shop is called Bohemia. It's on Main between 12th and 13th. So she has contributed to this evening. Now, Jennifer is wearing this as it would be worn now. It's a rayon or a polyester jersey, so it fits. Jersey, by the way, was invented in 1589. The first machine developed to knit fabric was invented by an Anglican clergyman in 1589. Wouldn't he be proud? And as it says in the gallery in several places, the bird feathers should stay on the bird. It's fine for study and academic purposes. If we don't examine things in museums and learn from them, then who knows what the future will hold. But don't kill anything for a trophy. That is nuts. Anyway, thank you again for having us. I'd like to thank all the witnesses and all for